The show was brought to you by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is your number one source for the best deals on sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, and a whole lot more. Go to SeatGeek.com or download the SeatGeek app and use promo code BLUESEATS for $20 off your first purchase. That's promo code BLUESEATS only at SeatGeek, the official ticketing partner of From the Blue Seats, a New York Rangers podcast. Let there be live. Next stop on the Rivalry Tour, Boston. What's going on, Rangers fans? My name is Jimmy Finizzi, and this is From the Blue Seats, a New York Rangers podcast presented by SeatGeek. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at BlueSeats94 and use the hashtag BlueSeats to chat with us on any and all topics at hand. Also, make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube and subscribe on all audio platforms, and be sure to rate us 5 stars. It would mean the world to us. That is right. We are traveling up to Boston to chat about the Boston Bruins for this edition of the Rivalry Tour, Part 4. But of course, for Boston, I couldn't do this by myself. Once again, I have a brand new show, brand new to the Hockey Podcast Network family, Bruins Tape to Tape with Maria and Caroline. Ladies, it is a pleasure to meet you both. Welcome to the THPN family. How you guys doing?
Very awesome. Excellent. Yeah, we're great. We're excited to be part of the family. Thanks for letting us hop on to talk about our favorite topic, which is our Boston Bruins.
Yeah, especially with an OG6 team. We got special love for those OG Sixers. So
absolutely, always love an original 6 matchup between the Rangers and the Bruins every year. It's a pleasure to meet you, ladies. The pleasure is all mine to have you on. But let's not waste any more time and just jump straight into it. Obviously, They finished second in the Atlantic Division, 1 point behind the Florida Panthers, who are the Stanley Cup champions. And listen, I know, I know the feeling. I know the feeling. But in all seriousness, though, just describe what grade you would give the Bruins last season. Caroline, I'm going to start with you on this one. What grade would you give the Bruins for last season?
You know, I'm going to give them an A. I'm going to be generous because we didn't have super great expectations going into the year. I think a lot of people had doubts about how the season was going to start without the loss of our beloved Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci. I have been a massive Brad Marchand fan forever. And so I had no questions. I had full confidence in the new captain, but I know that there was a lot of question, what kind of leader is he going to be? Because he's extremely different from Bergeron. And so, they had an awesome fast start and they accomplished what I think we all had as a bare minimum expectation of they had to make it past the first round. That was an absolute non-negotiable. And the fact that they went to 6 games in the second round and actually probably did the best against the Florida Panthers of all of the teams that faced them. Sorry, Rangers. We did better. So that was my grade. I was very happy.
Listen, it's fine. Even though I picked the Rangers in 7 in that series against the Panthers, I knew Florida was the better team going in. They were just more complete. But listen, as much as I would hate to give another Boston team love, I may be in New Jersey, but I'm a New York fan for life. I don't like anything Boston, more so maybe the Red Sox especially, but even still, it's beside the point. But give the Bruins credit. They did play them at least more competitive than the Rangers did, so I will give them credit there. You probably should have beaten Toronto, and you did. I mean, granted, Toronto really doesn't do anything anyway, but even still, that was a much closer series than I think most people would have liked to anticipate, but you guys seem to always have success against Toronto anyway, so what do I know? But Maria, what grade would you give the Bruins last season?
So I'm not as generous as my charming co-host.
Oh no.
And so no. It's not going to be
optimist.
Yeah, it's not going to be that bad. I'm going to go the B+, B- route, and more so because I really felt that they could have beat the Florida Panthers if they had just been able to provide some secondary scoring.
Yes.
And as well as the season went, much better than any of us expected for the reasons Caroline stated, losing, I don't know how many hundreds of points between David Krejci and Patrice Bergeron, and that, defensive presence that both of them brought as part of their game. Did they fare better than we thought? Absolutely, absolutely. But they had opportunities to beat the Florida Panthers, and they just couldn't seem to take advantage of the opportunities that the Panthers threw their way.
Yeah. Yep.
No, I mean it's a fair point you bring up, and listen, losing Krejci and Bergeron both to retirement, I might add, is a massive blow. I mean, you're losing a lot of veteran presence, but as much as I hate to say it, you still have Brad Marchand, who, I'm sorry, ladies, I have to say it, great player, Hall of Fame player, Stanley Cup champion, no question about it. He's just a pain in the ass, man. He is just an absolute.
That's why we love him.
But he's our pain and we love him.
That may be true. He's a pest. He's what he is. But that's what you need on a team like the Boston Bruins. You need that agitator, which is something I wish the Rangers would have. I mean, maybe they have that in Matt Rempe, but let's see what he does in a full season. But anyway, I digress. But now that you don't have Krejci and Bergeron anymore, this is going to be a whole different looking Bruins team going into this season. I'm going to get your expectations in a little bit, but just describe the overall feeling of how it felt when you first heard that those two were not just leaving the Bruins, but ultimately retiring. Maria, how did you feel when you first heard that news?
I felt like the rug had been pulled out from underneath me, because it didn't appear to me when, there's been speculation with regard to Bergeron there, and there had been for a while. And, we all knew that there was really nothing in the pipelines that could even come close to doing what Bergeron did, both as a captain and as a player for the Boston Bruins. And then you add David Krejci on top of that, who, in my view, was part of the core of the Boston Bruins. And when I refer to the core, I'm going back as far as, Zdeno Chara, Tuukka Rask, Patrice Bergeron, Brad Marchand, David Krejci, and to some degree David Pastrnak. He's young, but he's part of that secondary core that's going to fill that void. Losing those two guys, and then having Chara go off into the sunset and Tuukka go off into the sunset, it was hard to understand where that production and how that production was potentially going to be replaced.
Caroline, what do you think?
I wasn't particularly surprised by David Krejci. I understand the Slavic mentality, being first gen of Polish parents. So I'm like, I get his reserve. I understand. Fair. Like, I was expecting him to be like, I'm here, but I'm like, not here. He always kind of had that a little bit of an aloofness. So I wasn't surprised when he wasn't coming back. It kind of just seemed like, I don't know. I don't want to say that his heart wasn't in it, but he wasn't the same guy that we'd had, 5 years ago. Still talented, but it's just not the same. Bergeron, I was really sad for a couple of different reasons. One, the guy is the same age as me. Like, we were born the same year. And so I'm like, oh my God, that's it. Like, I am now inching closer and closer to being older than everyone in the NHL.
Oh,
so I'm like, oh man, that makes me sad. But I also, as much as I loved Zdeno Chara as the captain, and I think, you know, what he did to the Bruins, the organization, the culture, he completely revolutionized what it means to be a Boston Bruin. I was sad that Bergeron didn't get to be captain longer because of how long Chara was captain. I think it was like 15 or 16 years.
Yes.
And I wish he'd just been able to be captain longer. That was the thing that honestly made me the saddest, because this guy, I mean, he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
No question.
Overall good human. And like, I just wish he had that opportunity to be in that reward position for longer. You know, and the same things like Maria said, knowing the 200-foot player that he is, I mean, his presence in the face-off circle, we could tell probably about a month into the season last year, once kind of like the adrenaline and high of the start of the season wore off, just what kind of an impact he had on the blue line. And with him not being there and seeing, oh, he was kind of covering all manner of sins being committed by some of our defensemen, that I think we didn't realize just how much he was covering for them. Right. You know, so that was tough. I was sad. That's the best way I could describe it.
No, it's fair. I mean, look, I don't pay as close enough attention to the Bruins as you guys do, but I can imagine, you know, losing those two guys, you know, again, that veteran presence in the locker room, especially with the younger guys, it's got to be a tough feeling for them, especially because you've been familiar with them for so long, and to lose them to retirement, yes, it hurts, but you also have to realize, hey, you know what? You know, they're not getting any younger. It's a business. You got to do what's best for you and your family. And by the way, I make this joke a lot as an indicator to how old I am. When the Rangers last won the Stanley Cup, I was 2 months. If that gives you an indicator of how old I am. So I digress there.
I remember very well when the Rangers last won the Cup.
Oh, boy.
Does Maria.
I've got you all beat.
She's got us all beat. She's got.
I remember
what's the most vivid memory you have of them last winning the cup? Now I'm actually curious about this. Go ahead, Maria.
Well, my first exposure to hockey was during the era of the Big Bad Bruins, and I'm talking Bobby Orr, Phil Esposito. Watching those games with my dad, being a young kid, and just falling in love with the sport of hockey, and following the team as best while I lived in this area, and then moving away, still keeping an eye on the team, but then raising my own kids who played hockey, then coming back here, and being able to be in the building for every game during the 2011 Stanley Cup playoff run. And, sharing those memories with, either my kids or my family, unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, but I can go back to those days of, and watching those guys, ripping it up after a game, and smoking a cigarette.
I know, in between periods. Like, could you imagine?
You imagine that in today's game? Forget it. They would all be canceled. But now, I am curious about something since you brought up that era of the Big Bad Bruins, because there was one player that really did catch my eye during that era, and that's Ray Bjork. I know he obviously didn't win a cup with the Bruins at that time. Probably deserved to, but that's beside the point.
Oh, yeah.
Describe your feeling when you saw him lift that cup with Colorado. How were you feeling about him?
After 22 years, Raymond Bourque. Like, I can quote it to you. I literally have chills right now. And I'll tell you this, you'll appreciate this, Jimmy, because I'm actually from New York. I am I'm a second generation Bruins fan, because my dad, who grew up during there were only 6 teams era,
Okay.
He and his dad didn't get along. His dad was a massive Rangers fan. So my dad picked the Bruins in spite of him, right? So that's how our fandom developed out of spite, as probably most Bruins fandoms are. And so, but growing up in New York State, I didn't have Nesson or any of that. I had Fox Sports New York. So I actually grew up, while I kept an eye on the Bruins, because that's what my dad was a fan of. I grew up actually watching the Devils and listening to Doc and Chico call those games. And so I followed that entire series because I was rooting for the Devils in 2001, but I knew the importance of Ray Bourque and lifting that cup and just like watching it and being 1000% okay with the fact that the Devils lost that game. I think it was in 7 games.
It was in 7 games, yes.
I can watch that clip, that moment. Like I said, I could quote it all these years later, and it's still to this day, watching that clip, chills. Like I've got goosebumps right now. Like that's how meaningful it was. How it's interesting because you don't see that a lot ever in the past, even today, when you've got a player who is such a franchise player that I think he asked for the trade, or I don't remember the finer details of the story, but for him to leave and be gone for a little over a year and win a cup, and that the city of Boston and all of New England was just as thrilled for him personally as if the Bruins won the cup, right? Like he got the cup to Boston. I was going to say,
they honored him in a parade.
I know.
That's how happy they were for him.
You don't see that. So
no, you don't.
Yeah. He's one of the greatest players in the game, and just an unbelievable player. Unbelievable.
Do you know the beautiful thing about being a sports fan? There's only 2 days the whole year without a game. 2! With so much happening and so much action, that makes just about every day game day at DraftKings Sportsbook. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. It really couldn't be any easier, any simpler. I am seeing, though, that you can bet the Florida Panthers to repeat as Stanley Cup champions at plus 900 for the 24-25 season, but that's just what I would bet on. What you would bet on is up to you. And if you want to know how simple it is, if you just place your first bet and bet $5, you get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Well, how do you do that? Just download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use our code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Blue Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. Deposit and eligibility restrictions apply. See terms and responsible gaming resources at sportsbook.draftkings.com/hockey terms. This show is brought to you by BetterHelp. Question: what are your self-care non-negotiables? Maybe you never skip leg day, or it could be something simple like drinking more water. Our schedules are packed nowadays, and it's a huge priority to take care of ourselves. Mental health is so important, and therapy is something you should never skip to make sure that your mental health is in check. It can help you set boundaries, develop positive coping skills, and become the best version of yourself. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's completely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suitable to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. Plus, you can switch therapists at any time for no extra cost. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp, because your mental health matters. Visit betterhelp.com/THPN to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/THPN. Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you. You know, he was named NHL's top 100 for a reason, and whenever I watch that video on him specifically, I get chills every time.
Yeah.
You know, obviously I didn't grow up in that era. I grew up on 90s, early 2000s hockey. I didn't become a Ranger fan officially until like 2005, I believe. So it took me a little bit to fully understand what was going on. But after seeing that video, I said, damn, now I understand how that entire city felt about that one specific player who did so much for them, didn't win a championship, yet he goes somewhere else and he's honored in the city that idolized him.
Yeah.
That's how much he meant to that city and to that organization. I get chills every time. But anyway,
it's unheard of. Yeah.
No, it is unheard of, and I don't think you'll see anything like that ever again, in all honesty, you know, unless for some reason we get lucky. But so let's get back to the present day Bruins here. You know, let's go to the offseason here, where you did make a couple of interesting moves. You know, you got Elias Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov, Max Jones, Riley Tuft. You got Jonas Korpisalo, which is, I don't know if you want to call it an upgrade in goal. I mean, Korpisalo deserved a much better situation than what he was already dealt with, in my personal opinion. He'll have a much better situation in Boston. But Jeremy Swayman still is not signed. It's been nearly 100 days at the time of this recording, and I just want to know what the hell is going on and what is taking them so long to re-sign him, because wasn't there talk about him being the number one goalie? Well, if that's the case, why are you taking so long to re-sign him for?
That's
Depends on who you ask. Maria's going to be more pessimistic than I.
I'm getting a little annoyed. I'm not going to lie. I'm getting a little annoyed at the situation here because, you know, all we heard last season was you can't keep both these guys, right? You can't keep Linus, and you knew Jeremy was going to be due, based on the way he played, was going to be due for a significant pay increase. Yes. Nobody wants to go back to arbitration, and the Bruins can say, you know, magnanimously, oh, no, we don't want to go to arbitration. Well, no, you don't, because you're going to lose big.
They did last year.
To arbitration.
They did. Yeah.
And so I'm still a little perplexed by how Don Sweeney has prioritized what he's done this season, because, you know, I thought in my puny little mind that once you made the deal with the Ottawa Senators and you had Linus off the books, your first order of business would be to take care of Jeremy Swayman, and then, you know, go out and deal with, you know, the Zadorovs and the Lindholms and the Mac Joneses. So Max Jones, I'm not sure. And I'm getting, as we inch closer and closer to training camp, I know he's, you know, he's been around the city of Boston. He's been involved in a lot of charity events in and around the city of Boston.
Yeah.
He says he wants to be here. I believe him when he says he wants to be here. He says he has faith in his agent, but I'm just not understanding why we haven't had a deal announcement yet.
So if that's the case, then if you're the GM, what deal would you give Swayman?
I'm much more, again, I was the much more generous one. I think my case was, and especially after Saros got that extension down in Nashville, which was right around the ballpark of what I was expecting. I'm like, yeah, that's what Jeremy Swayman deserves. Now, I understand, you know, he's still an RFA. This is going to be his first big contract. You know, we have a lot of conversation in our Discord and in
hold on a second, Carol. I don't mean to cut you off. I apologize, but Steve, that's where I was going to go. If you're that hesitant to give Swayman an 8-year extension, that's fine. But to sit here and tell me that you're going to wait this long up until training camp to sign this guy, you might as well just sign him to at least a 1-year contract then if you're waiting this long. What's the point?
That's what I'm kind of wondering now. Is part of the conversation we've been having is, okay, maybe it's not necessarily the money. Maybe it's the term, right? Because it's his first big deal, right?
Exactly.
Like we've seen this kind of deal with Don Sweeney in the past. I believe a similar deal was dealt with Charlie McAvoy, where they got kind of a bridge deal, like maybe 3 years, just to be sure, right? Because again, he's 25, 26 years old.
Yeah.
I'm at this point, I'm thinking it's term because they have the cash, right? They've got $8 million. Now, I'm not saying give all $8 million to Jeremy Swayman. Like, do I think he deserves it? I mean, if that's what it took to keep him, I'm going to pay him.
You can have an argument about that any day of the week, but even still, whether he's worth it or not,
right?
That's at your own discretion.
Right. So at this point, I'm thinking it's term, but this guy's agent would be my personal guess as to what the hang up is, because I don't know if you know this, he has the same agent as William Nylander, who
I did know that. Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if it wasn't last season. It could have been the season before. I don't remember exactly. But the rule is you have to be signed by December 1st or you're out for the whole season.
Yes.
And Nylander signed the deal on the last day. So we know that this is this agent's MO, and I'm all for Jeremy doing whatever it takes to get the best and most fair deal. I am 100% supportive of that, especially with the history that in Boston, lots of players take team-friendly deals because there are so many other intangible perks to being in Boston, right? Like some very similar perks to being a New York Ranger. You're part of history, right? You're part of an original six team. You're in a city that is a very desirable place to live, especially, you know, I mean, I know Swayman's an American, but like for a lot of Europeans, they want to be in New York and in Boston, right? So like there are a lot of benefits, and we talk constantly about the culture, how it is a very different than your typical locker room culture in hockey. And so like a lot of these players take team-friendly deals, and I don't blame Jeremy for finding an agent who's going to try and get him his bag. But like at this point, I'm getting a little annoyed. And if this is not in that Amazon special, I'm going to be annoyed too, because I love drama. I love the gossip. I'm dying to know what is this deal because I do not understand. And it seems very friendly too, which is the wild thing, right? Because both parties agreed to not go to arbitration.
Right.
So, and he's in like all their social media. He was in the schedule release. Like you don't participate in those things if there's any doubt about you becoming the franchise goalie. You don't, right?
I agree with you. I mean, I just don't understand why you want to wait until possibly the last day to sign the deal and risk losing out on a year of playing of hockey. It makes no sense to me.
Yep. Yeah, I kind of wonder if Boston is calling the agent's bluff a little bit because, you know, last week, or actually we released the episode this week where we talked about Korpisalo and how we see in him a little bit of like Linus Ullmark when he was in Buffalo and he wasn't a particularly spectacular goalie. And then he comes and he works with goalie Bob, who's the Bruins goalie coach, and turned into a Vezina goaltender. So, you know, seeing Korpisalo, understanding the situation that he came from in Ottawa, goalie Bob must see something. So as they inch closer and closer to training camp, you know, in June, Jeremy Swayman had the team over a barrel. As we get closer and closer to September and October, the tables are turning, right? And they're going to be like, well, we've got this guy who's NHL. He's got NHL experience. Goalie Bob saw something. They'll go with him. So he's kind of losing some ground here. And that makes me nervous too.
I can't say I blame you. Maria, what were you going to say? Go ahead.
No, I'm just still perplexed as to why this is not a hill that you potentially want to die on. Okay. You went to arbitration. This kid sat through arbitration, heard things that he likely didn't want to hear. He was very vocal about the arbitration process and his dislike of that process. He played out of his mind for most of the season and in the playoffs. He was phenomenal.
He was one of the reasons the Bruins got what they did in the first place.
He was one of the best, if not the best goalie in the playoffs until they lost to the Panthers.
Yeah, it was him, it was Bobrovsky, it was Igor, and
Igor, yep.
Pretty much it.
That's pretty much it.
There was no other good goalie in the postseason.
No, because the goalies in the West were like, sieves.
Hellebuck,
giving up goals all over the place,
Right.
That's going to get lightly, but okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, and you brought up the other thing I just remembered, Maria, that you and I have talked about. You brought up Shesterkin. I kind of also wonder if his agent is like trying to keep an eye on what's happening in conversations with Shesterkin, because he's probably going to be one of the highest paid goaltenders by the time his contract is done.
Yeah.
So they're paying attention.
Look, listen, I discussed this on my show. I've already said it. Ranger fans, I don't think really want to hear it from me, but I would not give him a 6-7 year extension if I were the Rangers personally, because I've said it before and I'll say it again. I just don't want another Henrik Lundqvist situation all over again, because we're seeing the same thing that we're seeing with Igor, where he's essentially carrying the team on his back.
Yeah, the
workload
workload
is doing nothing.
Yeah.
Same thing with Hank. Yeah. And I'm worried that the same thing could possibly happen with Jeremy Swayman if and only if he gets that long-term extension. That's just me, though.
Yeah.
Lundqvist was worked like a government mule by the time the poor guy got to the playoffs. And listen, again, I'm not a New York fan, but there are certain players in the league, that you pay attention to, and you say, you know what? If it's not my team, someday I wouldn't mind seeing that guy hoist a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
And that's one guy that, you knew for a long time was, going into the Hall of Fame. His stats were amazing, but he had run out of gas by the time he got to the playoffs.
Yeah, because he was doing all the work.
All the work.
Thank you.
I love Hank for besides the fact he and I share a birthday, so we are birthday twins.
There you go.
But I love Hank, right? Like mad respect for Hank, even though he was a Ranger. But the other thing that I'm always concerned about is also like with goalies. And I wonder if there's some hesitation on Sweeney's part, is look at what happened with Sorokin with the Islanders. I feel like, he got this big deal and then he just kind of petered out. Like he's not playing it. I don't remember exactly how much he was making, but like what, $8 million a year, I think.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
He didn't really maintain that level. And so I think that's something that GMs are worried about, right? Because they don't ever want to end up in a Rick DiPietro situation. I mean, granted, that exact thing's never going to happen again, but right, like you don't want to be paying for a guy.
Yeah, he's still getting paid by the Islanders. I
know. So
man,
that's going to be one of the worst deals in the history of NHL hockey.
Oh, yeah.
That's a whole.
I think he's got like 2 years left.
Can I be honest though? Can I be honest? I wish that I had Rick DiPietro's life. If I had a contract like that, look, I obviously wouldn't want to get hurt. Obviously, I don't wish that upon any player. But if I had a contract like that where it didn't work out and I'm still getting paid by my team, sign me up. I can live in the life of my dreams right now.
Right. Please, him, Carey Price, he's living that dream too. He's not even retired. He's not even retired.
As a rule, I'm not a fan of 8, 9, 10-year deals for any player, but especially for a goalie, because I think it's a different kind of wear and tear, and the workload. And I know now a lot more teams are going into that 2 tandem goaltending structure. But if you're going to do that, you look at it and say, well, if I got this guy on my right hand, that is my number 2 that I'm paying $3 or $4 million to for the next 3 or 4 years.
Yes.
How am I going to pay $8+ million for 8+ years to this guy over here and balance workloads?
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the bottom line of it all, is that yes, I understand why goalies get these extensions and make their money, but at the same time, it's a very risky move, especially when you give them that money and you cannot build a supporting cast around them to get him some offensive support and block shots in front of their own net, a la my team, who for some reason can't do that every damn year.
Or the poor Ottawa Senators. My God.
Oh, my God.
Linus is in big trouble. Linus is in big trouble.
That's a whole different animal.
Yeah.
No wonder he hasn't signed an extension in Ottawa.
Literally. Anyway, though.
Ottawa's a beautiful city. It's a beautiful city.
Right.
It's a great place to live, but
but
you're not going to fix that in a year.
The team was just massively disappointing last year after we had most of us had playoff expectations. I hope it's better for them this year, but I'm not really expecting all that great things in Ottawa. But anyway, back to the Bruins here, because we got way off track there. We apologize, ladies and gentlemen. We're having too much fun here. But going to the offseason in general for the Bruins, what did you guys like and dislike about the moves that they made? Caroline, I'll start with you.
Well, at the end of the season, I don't know if the Rangers do this kind of thing, but it's been kind of a tradition in Boston where a couple days after the end of the season, they have an end of season presser. There's the son of the owner.
Rangers do that as well.
Okay, yeah. We had Cam Neely, the president, Don Sweeney, our GM, and Jim Montgomery, the coach, and they kind of talked a little bit of a debrief. And one of the things that Don Sweeney had talked about, and of course it's something that, fans and media have been screaming about forever. We had to get bigger, we had to get faster. And understanding that the trade deadline, everybody was a bit hamstrung because of just the cap situation. He did what he said they needed to do. And I was pleased with that because we got a hell of a lot bigger, especially with defensemen. The fact that Charlie McAvoy, who's like 6'1", is our shortest defenseman.
Yes.
Thank you. We are finally done with the 5'9", 5'10" skill defenseman era in Boston. I understand what they were trying to accomplish with that, with Torrey Krug and Matt Grzelcyk. But at the end of the day, you could be have the talent of Bobby Orr, but if you're that small, you're going to get targeted. And that is exactly what happened in the first round for Matt Grzelcyk. He played one game because, again, in Toronto, because they were just pummeling him. So thank God we've moved on from that. And they're finally playing in the big boys league and they've got the size and the bodies. The speed will have to be seen. I've not watched a lot of Elias Lindholm, West Coast. I live on the East Coast. It's past my bedtime. So I don't watch those games.
Fair enough.
But, losing Jake DeBrusk, the man has speed. The boy was fast, right? Even if he was or was not scoring, whatever he was doing,
he was still probably your fastest player.
He was one of the fastest. So I'm curious to see where they land with that. And while I think they did a fantastic A1 job beefing up the blue line, which, I grew up being always told and firmly believe defense wins cups, goalies win cups.
Defense wins championships, that old motto.
Right. I'm not really sure what the plan is with the offense because it seems like they're kind of playing it a little bit casual going into the start of the season, which is fine. They want to give guys chances with training camp and see how things land. But it doesn't seem like the forwards are as complete as the defense. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to trust the process. I've learned my lesson as much as I've hated Don Sweetie for the last however many years he's been in Boston at this point. The last few years have turned out well. So I'm trusting in the process, and I regularly tell Maria, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. I have to believe it's going to be fine.
Maria, what do you think?
I am so happy that we're moving away from Smurf defensemen, because I myself have had my fill of them in a Boston Bruins uniform.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that ding, 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 the light bulb finally went on when you have the Florida Panthers twice in the last 2 playoff season kicking your proverbial asses because you're not big enough on the back end. So I'm as I said to my lovely co-host, thank you, Matt Grizzlick, but see you later. Don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My big question is, who is going to play with David Pastrnak to create the time and space that man needs to be the force that we have seen him be able to be? But then when you get into the playoffs is a different story, because
they're on him like white on rice.
People don't think twice about double teaming him, triple teaming him. And, so not having that supporting cast to take advantage of the fact that Pasta was being taken out of his game so that whoever was playing with him could take that space and create offense. I'm not sure that has been addressed in this offseason.
Yeah.
That's a fair point. I mean, I still think they're going to be a playoff team, and we'll get to your expectations in a bit. But at the same time, it's like there are still a few question marks. You got to re-sign Jeremy Swayman at some point. I mean, Korpisalo's definitely going to get some minutes. But you are right about the supporting cast about Pastrnak, because we know Pastrnak's going to do his thing. There's no question about that. He's a great player every single year. We know how dangerous he is, but he needs help. He can't be going out there and scoring 50 goals every single season, and you expect him to carry the load. No, it's not a one-person effort here. It's a team.
And he can't be fighting Matt Tkachuk, okay?
Don't even get me started.
Yeah.
Don't even get me started. Jesus.
Don't remind me. But anyway, to wrap things up on the show for today, final season expectations for the Boston Bruins this season. Do you expect them to be right at the top for the Atlantic Division again, or do you expect something different for a different-looking Bruins team? Maria, I'm going to start with you here.
I expect them to be a top team in our conference this year again. That has been the mindset of this management group for quite a number of years, and I don't expect that to change. The one wild card I'll throw in that is our coach.
I knew it was coming.
I was going to say that.
It had to be said. It has to be said.
You're right. But Caroline, what about you?
Yeah, I think this is the first time in a couple of seasons, at least 2 seasons, where the expectation is not, like, the bar is not low. Like, it's been low for the last 2 years. And I think this year there's going to be a higher expectation. I think I agree with Maria, certainly playoffs, obviously. And I think certainly to get in not on a wild card, I think is an expectation. In Boston, it's the city of champions, right? The people are always going to say you fall short unless you finish all the way, right?
Right.
Reality, I think that we should see them with, Elias Lindholm and the defensive structure that they've got and these new players. I certainly think that they should be battling for a top spot going into the playoffs. It'll be interesting to see what Monty does. I'm personally not bothered by the constant line shuffling, but I know that I am in the minority because I'm like, do what you got to do to get it done. I don't care. And the other thing that I want to see is that the Bruins do not get swept during this season by the New York Rangers, because that was like the only team that just had their number. They could not seal the deal, no matter how hard they tried.
Sorry about that one.
Oh, what a smackdown it was the day after.
It was brutal.
That was brutal to watch.
Hey, I'm just a fan. I watch the games. I have no control of what happens. But in all seriousness, though, not only do I have the Bruins making the playoffs this year, and you might be shocked to hear this, I actually have them winning the Atlantic. And let me tell you why. I think Florida's going to suffer a little bit of a Stanley Cup hangover. I still expect Florida to be a playoff team, but I think they're going to be at least a 3 seed. If I'm being generous, Boston, yes, it's a different look for them, but I have full confidence that they're going to get a deal for Jeremy Swayman done. They're going to have their number 1 guy. They still got Pastrnak. They still got, even though I can't stand his guts, Brad Marchand. You still have somewhat of a core there to help you out. So I think it's going to be just enough to help them win the division. As a matter of fact, if you want my official Atlantic predictions here, I have Boston winning the division. Wow. I have Toronto second and Florida third. That's the top 3 for me. Now, I know people are going to call me crazy for putting Toronto up there, but hey, Austin Matthews is the new captain. He's
going to change the whole culture.
Oh yeah, that's what's wrong with Toronto.
Listen, I know there's obviously a million things wrong as to why Toronto can never get over the hump in the postseason, but I still think Toronto's a playoff team. They're going to be competitive for a while as long as Austin Matthews is there. But bottom line is, I trust Boston more than I trust Toronto to win the Atlantic Division. So give me Boston to win the division this season. But before we let you guys sign off, how can people find out more about your show, and where can they find you guys on social media?
Yeah, well, we're everywhere. Maria, you want to tell them about Twitter, and I'll cover the rest?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter X at Maria of H2O Town.
At least somebody else still says Twitter around here.
We call it Twitter.
Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
We have a show account as well on X, Tape to Tape. You can find us, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube.
Yep. Yeah, pretty much for all of our podcast handles, it's at the Bruins Tape to Tape. You can find me at Spelled with a K on Mastodon and Threads. So yeah, just and YouTube, we've got some specials there. So that's where you can find us.
It should be a hell of a season, and hopefully we'll sweep you again. But no,
Jimmy, my heart.
In all seriousness, ladies, it was such a pleasure to meet you. You're more than welcome to come back anytime, and I can't wait to do it all again with you during the regular season.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Jimmy.
Thanks for having us.
Please.
Anytime. Go subscribe to these ladies. I'll leave a link to their show down below in the description on YouTube and all audio platforms. That is going to do it for us here on From the Blue Seats. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this content, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Hit that bell so you're notified of every video on YouTube. Also, drop a comment on YouTube letting us know what you think of the Bruins for the 24-25 season, and let us know on all social media as well, Twitter and Instagram at BlueSeats94, and use hashtag BlueSeats. And one more reminder, we are sponsored by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is your #1 source for the best deals on sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, and more. Go to SeatGeek.com or download the SeatGeek app and use promo code BlueSeats, all one word, BlueSeats, for $20 off your first purchase. Alongside Maria and Caroline, my name is Jimmy. This is From the Blue Seats, a New York Rangers podcast. Go Blue Shirts, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.